The 8th of August 2024 is an important date in my relationship with Star Citizen. The date marks 10 years since first jumping on board back in 2014. Like any long-term relationship, those 10 years have been filled with ups and downs. At times, Star Citizen has provided pure wonder, excitement, and hope for the future, and at other times has been a test of patience and a lesson in frustration. But reflecting on that journey might prove interesting to some of you, and so here it is. I'm Farrister, and in most videos on this channel I try to avoid use of the word I, to try to be a little more objective and circumspect. It probably feels right that this video is an exception to that general aim. To that end, this video will be my subjective thoughts and feelings about the past decade as a Star Citizen backer, some of which you may agree with, and some of which you might not. I suppose that's the nature of subjectivity, but as always, it will be honest. So hopefully you'll join me as we turn the clock back 10 years. It's August the 8th, 2014, and having just read about Star Citizen, my mind is blown. This title promises to be the greatest, the best damn space sim ever, and will be purely focused on a PC experience, meaning no compromises to mass market to consoles, offering unrivaled support for high-end graphics and custom hardware. The game will offer a living universe of possibility, all experienced from your character's unique first-person perspective. Combat, exploration. You'll even be able to group up to operate larger ships as a crew of people working together. It didn't take me long to be sold on the idea, and so my first game purchase was sat in the hangar, the Origin 325A. And it was quite literally sat in the hangar, because the first thing to download for Star Citizen was the hangar module. At this point I have to make clear, I wasn't making any YouTube videos at this time, and frankly Star Citizen was renowned for producing terrible frame rates, so much of what you'll see of this early period will just be snippets and screenshots, but hopefully they give a perspective. Walking around the hangar, seeing that little ship, climbing on the back to look around, the imagination ran wild, and that imagination of a future of infinite possibility was what first got me into Star Citizen, but is also the Achilles heel of the game for many. But we'll come to that soon. Back in 2014, the game is taking me days to download, and so the day after making my very first purchase, another $5 goes to the project to pay for the Arena Commander module to unlock that functionality. For those not satisfied with simply enjoying the beauty of the ship in their hangar, this relatively recently launched module back then gave players the chance to actually fly their ship in space. True 6 degrees of freedom movement, a detailed, complicated flight model. The best pilots who truly understood the gamut of fine controls of G-safeties and comms stab, of coupled and decoupled, those pilots were revered amongst the community as masters of the IFCS. For modern backers, some of that last sentence might not make sense, as one of the criticisms of the flight model changes that have happened over the years is that Star Citizen has moved much closer to being more of an aerodynamic flight model, like World War II dogfighting in space. But back in 2014, flying was complicated and that was exciting to get into, so it was a wonderful experience to actually get into the hangar, explore the ship, and then start learning to fly and fight. Over the next few weeks and months, reading more about the game, chatting to people on the forums, yes, forums long before Spectrum came along, I got deeper and deeper, upgrading to a Constellation Phoenix as a fancy multi-crew ship, upgrading again to an 890 jump luxury yacht, and imagining all of the possibilities of exploring the stars with friends. I had very quickly gone from spending $80 on a starter pack to having spent hundreds on the idea of a luxury space yacht. Then came the end of November 2014 with something that really blew my mind. During my time reading all about the vision of Star Citizen, I'd come across the concept of the Idris, a large corvette/frigate with a big railgun at the front and a long through-deck hangar for fighter craft. A select few had purchased them already for $1,000 or more, but the idea was that this would be an endgame, raid-style content for large groups of players to man and operate. An actual, capital-sized warship in-game. The idea of that sounded great, and I had joined an organisation to help crew one once they were eventually available in-game, but at the time the Idris model looked kinda gangly, a little bit awkward, and quite reliant on the railgun at the front. But in November, an article came up which showed a new, bigger warship designed by Dave Hobbins, the Javelin-class destroyer. This ship immediately captured my imagination. Not only did the launch document talk about how multiple people would need to work together to crew the ship, but it had a detailed deck map which talked about all of the different functions that people would fulfill. It was a ship that would kinda do a bit of everything whilst being well protected, and most importantly, the Javelin looked awesome. The visual style just captured me, it still does. Inevitably then, following a rocky sale experience, it sat in my hangar. So by the end of 2014, within a few short months I'd discovered the game, played some of the early modules, and quickly become incredibly invested to concierge level. For the uninitiated, that means I spent far too much on a video game that wasn't out yet. – 2015 was more of the same. I've been reading more about engineering, the long multi-crew system design document detailing all of the things that the game would offer to large capital ship teams, and overall building up my hype levels. I became a regular subscriber to the extra content on offer. I bought a HOTAS joystick combo to really push my flight capabilities to the next level, and even went to the 2015 CitizenCon event in Manchester to hype some more in real time. And that just built the hype further, seeing Admiral Bishop give a rousing speech, seeing Star Citizen Alpha 2.0 where players were first able to spawn in Stanton, including on multi-crew ships for the first time, and then seeing the Morrow tour of an Idris. It felt like everything was coming together. I was excited for the future, and the future was almost here. Soon, trademarked. That might seem a little naive, and in hindsight it was, but at the time most of the big adverts for Star Citizen and Squadron 42 came with nice dates at the end of the video, coming soon in 2016, answer the call in 2017. With those dates coming officially from the project team, I genuinely believed this incredible game with so many features and functionality was right around the corner. It took the next year or two passing by to start to see reality come into view. 2016 and 2017 marked a steady waning of my enthusiasm for Star Citizen, mostly because ideas remained big, but tangible progress remained slow. It became clear that the recently launched PU was filled with problems. It took longer than expected to get multi-crew working properly, and deadlines kept slipping. One of the major problems with the project started to become obvious, that those big ideas of doing things that had never been done, the very thing that created so much hype, was unraveled by the technical complexity of what needed to happen. Those things had never been done for a reason. It was technically very difficult. The situation was exacerbated by the amount of extra work that was being created, the features and scope being significantly expanded through use of stretch goals, and the dreams of the boss. The extra ships being concepted and sold that needed work to actually build, all of this served to push deadlines back, before those due dates were eventually obfuscated altogether to try to abate disappointment. This led me to have a loss of confidence with the project, a falling out of love with Star Citizen. I went and did other things. I used my newly acquired HOTAS to fly a lot of DCS World, and largely put Star Citizen on the back burner, preferring to come back when things had finished. I felt burned out by the over-promises and under-delivery. To fly so high in excitement and hype, it was a long way to fall back down to reality. But they say that time heals all wounds. As 2018 made way to 2019, 5 years on from first discovering the idea of Star Citizen, the baby steps forward in the persistent universe started to create a more dynamic and interesting game. Cargo hauling finally came just before the end of 2017, in-game mining came along in mid-2018, and Hurston was added as a first new planet to visit at the end of 2018. ArcCorp came along in 2019, and Stanton was steadily expanding. This steady progress rekindled my interest in Star Citizen, but tempered with a little wisdom from the scars of the past. There were no shortage of bugs or missing features, but the game was becoming more playable. My focus, therefore, became more about enjoying what was playable now, with a wary eye on the future, rather than getting overly hyped. Rolling into 2020, I started making some YouTube videos about the game and some of the ships therein, for which some people seemed interested in my thoughts, and so playing the game to cultivate that new online community became a reason to continue. Roll forward to today, and broadly that's still my approach. I'm excited by the possibilities of the future for Star Citizen and Squadron 42, but until it's in my hands, I reserve judgment. It's a common theme of my videos that I focus on what's in-game right now, rather than the promises or beliefs of what might happen in the future, not least because many of the things that some players are convinced will happen are based on some very historic statements and frankly might not actually happen anymore. But by actively playing what's in our hands each and every patch, that's where I get the most value from Star Citizen. Back in 2014, I spent a small fortune on the idea of a game, and just like many of you, I'm still waiting for much of that idea and many of those ships. But what I'm playing right now, each and every week, I'm enjoying. It's not the complete package, far from it, and it's not without bugs, there are plenty of those too. But for me, Star Citizen as it is now is a fun game to play, warts and all. Every month that I'm enjoying playing the game for what it is, I'm slowly getting more and more value for that money with no ongoing subscription or server costs, at least not currently. So here we are, 10 years on and a lot has changed. I used to be a young man with a load of free time and a wild imagination. Now I'm a little older, arguably wiser, with a skeptical but cautiously hopeful eye on the future. The one thing that has been an absolute constant during the last 10 years, however, has been the people met along the way. I joined my organisation back in 2014 and have not looked back since, having made a number of great friends there over the years. The same is true of my more recent experience making YouTube videos. I've been fortunate to be graced by a fantastic audience who are incredibly supportive about this passionate hobby, and also lucky to meet some of the content creators in our community who've also turned out to be some great people. It's a bit of a cliche that the people you meet along the way are what make a journey great, but in this case that happens to be true. Some of you might be thinking that this seems like an awfully rosy picture to paint for a game that has been almost ready for over 10 years. Well, I hope it doesn't come off that way, but ultimately those of you who would say that raise a fair criticism, and I can understand how many people would simply get fed up of waiting. I think too that if I was focused on the promised end result, I'd probably feel the same way, but focusing on the here and now has helped me stay a bit more grounded. I probably ought to address that some people might accuse me of being some kind of mouthpiece for the developers at CIG, as many content creators are closely linked with the game developers. Well, despite my reaching out a few times, I'm not involved with any of their community team or influencer programs or anything like that. Perhaps that's because I'm too honest sometimes, like today, about the good and the bad, or perhaps simply because I'm just a random guy making videos about a game I enjoy. It's a shame, but regardless, it means I can openly say I've had no involvement with the developers at CIG in my capacity as video guy, and so these thoughts are entirely my own. Ultimately, the most important thing I've learned is that everybody has their own relationship with this game, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. And it is for each person to decide whether they're happy with what we have, are excited by the vision, or disappointed with the delays. All of those positions are valid to me, as somebody who has been on that journey too. But for me, what we have right now is pretty good. It's far from problem-free, there's still an awful lot missing, but this game has managed to keep me playing week in, week out for the past few years. And there aren't many games out there that could say that. So, Star Citizen, here's to the last 10 years, here's hoping I might still be playing for another 10 years to come, and I think I speak for everyone watching in saying, I really hope you're officially released before then. If you're new here or not yet subscribed to the channel, if you got this far, I really hope you'll consider hopping aboard. I'd love to read your thoughts or reflections on my or your own relationship with Star Citizen in the video comments, and if you want me to make more videos like this in future, then pressing the like button will give me that nudge. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.